Wander Wealthy Podcast, episode 132. Welcome back to the Wander Wealthy Podcast, everyone. Hello, hi, how are you doing? My name is Tess. I am the host of this show. If you're new, Wander Wealthy is a place where we talk openly about money, especially for those who are running their own online service-based business. That is who I specialize in working with, and I love to help women who are running their online businesses develop some financial literacy, but also rewire their money mindset so that they can find success, whatever success looks like for them, whether it's in their work, in the money that they're making, in the way they're spending money, saving money, investing money, the way they think about money, whatever it is, I want to help you with it. So I'm a wealth and mindset coach, and my clients are typically service-based online entrepreneurs or high-income women who are working on building their financial plan. So if that is you, stick around. I'm going to tell you how we can work together in the future. But today we're going to talk about a topic that has come up recently. I actually get this question quite a bit, whether it's from just kind of audience members or my clients. And it really recently came up with a client where we have been working primarily on money mindset, but in everything that I do, we take a very comprehensive approach, both tackling the money mindset piece, but also the money management piece. And although this client is more heavily focused on money mindset, money management questions come up all the time. What do you have saved? What are your savings goals? What do you want to accomplish? What is your plan? And the reaction from that question from this client was that saving to her feels like an act of scarcity. And I completely 100% see where she is coming from. And I think for some people who hear that reaction, to me, saving money feels like it's a scarce thing. It feels like I'm saving because I don't think there's enough to go around, so I have to save and pack my nuts for the winter. Some people would be like, what? I cannot believe that. And that's just because you might be more saving wired, whereas there's others who are more spending wired. And this is something we can dive into in another episode, but a lot of us have different saving, spending personalities. And so for those who are very attuned to saving feels very freeing. So that's kind of where I come from. I've been someone who has been much more risk averse from a natural wiring standpoint. And now I move into understanding that I need to take risk. I need to have more of an abundance mindset when it comes to risk. And then there are others who are much more risk attuned and less attuned to saving and making more strategic risks. They're willing to kind of put it all out there on the line. And what I find, because of the comprehensive approach I take, is that we also need to have comprehensiveness in this kind of saving, spending mindset, saving, spending behaviors and personality type, and find a balance and understand where you come from and what your counterbalance is, and identify opportunities to lean more into that. So if this isn't very clear, we're going to kind of talk more about that and just more so different beliefs, but I want to dive into this specific question even more right now. So the client asks, is saving money, or to them, they truly believe that saving feels like scarcity. And what I want to do right now is just identify what the difference is between scarcity and abundance. So when we think about, and we'll start with scarcity. Scarcity is really the belief, the situation where we truly believe that there is not enough to go around, that we will never be able to make enough, that we have to prepare for the end, that we have to work really hard to in order to get anything. And it doesn't necessarily help us when it comes to taking risks, when it comes to especially building business, because it can essentially keep us small and keep us in kind of self-sabotage. Scarcity is thinking that if one person, so in the case of business, if you have a competitor or even someone in your industry that's not necessarily a competitor or even someone outside of your industry, if they're making more, that means you're going to make less. And this is it's really important to differentiate this and break this down because, like I had mentioned, scarcity can keep you small when it comes to taking action, because if you think that someone else is going to make more and that's taking away from you, first, it puts you in a very bad headspace. Second, you go into what we call fight or flight response. And when you go into fight or flight, what you do is you shorten the time to make decisions. Your mind becomes less clear because it's just focused on this one specific thing, and therefore you can't consider all your options. And typically you lead pretty quickly to self-sabotage. So scarcity isn't necessarily a place we want to be in. Now, abundance is where we believe that there's more than enough to go around. When we need it, we'll get it. And what we have right now is exactly what we're meant to have. In abundance, when you're operating from abundance, the way that you view competitors or even, people in your industry is, if they can do it, I can do it too. It's a lot less focusing on what you don't have and much more focusing on what can you have. Right? So scarcity is thinking, I don't have this, there's not enough, I'll never get it. And abundance is much more focused on, how can I get that? Or I have more than enough, or there is more than enough and I'll get it, as time will allow it. And so when we think about the money management aspect of saving money, someone who is really wired in kind of an abundant mindset might think that saving is an act of scarcity, because what you're doing is you're stockpiling money with the fear that there may not be enough for you, or with the fear that someday you might need that money and you won't be able to make the money, so you'll need it for then. Or that, I think that's pretty much it. But along those lines, you feel like there's not enough, so you have to, keep gather your nuts for the winter, because over the winter you're not going to be able to make any money and money isn't abundant. And this is a really interesting place to come from, because it's really just one way of looking at saving. Something that I've been learning recently in my certification in NLP is the process of reframing. And what reframing does is it helps us look at a situation essentially through a different window, giving a new perspective to the same thing, but just seeing it differently, in a different light. And when you reframe saving, for someone who thinks saving is an act of scarcity, you can also reframe it from the natural saver's perspective and see what saving means. And so to me, saving, the way that I naturally go, because I am much more a natural saver and I tend to spend less. And that's something that I still have to work on, because to me, it is an act of scarcity to spend. Or to not spend. And I need to work on becoming more abundant so I will spend. But there's also this happy medium that we need to find. But when I think of saving, I think of, buying freedom. I think of opportunity. I think of, I can save and make money abundantly, bring money in abundantly. And we're going to get, the reason why I think this conversation is important is because everything depends on the frame that you look at it through, but also we need to understand the way that the mindset piece stacks on top of the management piece. We can, and it is my belief, that you can make as much money as you want to. Doing the process of even going from working in a traditionally W-2 employed job to building my own business has been the biggest proof that money is abundant, because I have complete control over how much money I want to make. And I don't give that control to anybody else. And even in a 9-to-5 job, if you are in a 9-to-5 job, you still have that control. It doesn't feel as abundant, in a way to say it. It doesn't feel like you have as much control because you're like, well, at the end of the day, it's their decision, but you still have control over how much money you allow to bring in. And you also have control over how much money you allow yourself to have. And so having money is something I like to use as a transition point from being abundant, having this abundant mindset and believing that saving money is an act of scarcity, to saying, okay, what if you don't save the money? What if you don't save it for anything? You're not, stockpiling your nuts for the winter, but what if you just allow yourself to have money instead of spending it? Instead of getting rid of it, instead of, putting it out there? What if you just allowed yourself to have money? And people who have this belief that saving money is scarce, that idea is going to be uncomfortable, but a little less uncomfortable than the idea of saving money for something. But in the reality, when we collapse all of this, having money and saving money numerically are the same things. It just depends on what we provide meaning to. And to me, from a very saving wired person, and I had mentioned this earlier, the act of spending money to me feels like an act of scarcity. And I recognize that, and I think we all need to recognize which end of the spectrum we come from so that we can identify our opportunities for leaning into the other side. So I've had to recognize that to me, spending money feels like an act of scarcity, and here's my rationale. My not woke rationale, because I'm trying to be more woke, I'm trying to lean to the other side, I'm trying to see that perspective. But from a very, one-sided rationale, it's like, well, spending your money, then you're doing so because you feel a lack in the material form. You feel a lack in the forms outside of what having money is. So you're spending it on something because you're trying to fulfill something that you are lacking. So you're feeling scarcity in other ways than the quote unquote savers, people like myself, might feel scarcity. So maybe I feel scarcity in terms of the need to have money for another day, another time, but I don't view that as scarcity. I view spending money as scarcity. Now, again, I recognize that is my natural wiring, and I need to become more comfortable and identify my strengths and my weaknesses and lean into the abundance mindset around spending money, because spending money can be very healthy. There's an obvious difference between being very, very almost like cheap, obviously, being cheap, to having a healthy relationship with spending money, to having an unhealthy relationship with overspending money. Being cheap and overspending, I would say, are both unhealthy relationships with money. And then we need to find that happy medium. So my natural attunement is to be cheap, and I need to work on my abundance to get into the kind of middle ground of having a healthy relationship. Finding things that, at the end of the day, the work that I do with my clients is, what are our priorities? That's where we should be spending the most of our money. And you don't want to scrimp. Is that a word? You don't want to scrimp on your priorities, because we can see the value in putting the money to work there. And the same kind of goes thinking on each end of those paradigms for the saving equation. To me, saving money feels really abundant, but there is definitely a downside to wanting to save too much money. There are a lot of people that I've worked with who have a problem of not allowing themselves to spend. So they err on the side of cheapness, and then they oversave. And it sounds ridiculous because you're like, over-saving? That's impossible. If you are someone who is especially a saver, or if you're someone who is not a saver at all and you hear that it's possible to oversave, then you think that's impossible. I could never get there. But there are a lot of people who do oversave. And so again, we have to find that happy medium, that healthy relationship with saving. And for some people, the people who don't see the value in saving, who assume saving is an act of scarcity, we obviously need to get them closer to the spectrum of seeing saving as freedom. And again, reframing saving for them to allow them to see the benefits and the value of saving from a place of abundance. So we painted that picture, and I think what it all boils down to, and where I want it to go for you, is actually to know that what we do with our money, especially when we think about money in general, money is a neutral topic, and we need to neutralize the topic of money, but many of us have such strong reactions to money based on, whether you're spending money, whether you're saving money, whether you're investing it, whether you're not doing anything with it. We all have these strong subconscious animal instinct reactions to money itself and what other people are doing with it. My exercise for you, for the next week or however long you want to do this, is start to pay attention to the judgments that you're having about money, especially about what other people are doing with their money. Because you'll start to recognize that you have certain, you lean to a certain end of the spectrum, and you have these beliefs that are so super deeply ingrained. And this likely has come from your subconscious programming, which equals, it's probably come from your parents, and if not directly from your parents' parents. And that's been a belief that you've let drive you. And so the belief of saving money is an act of scarcity comes from probably something that your parents did, that your parents believed, or your parents' parents, and it's just gone down the line. For me, believing that spending money is an act of scarcity is definitely something I can draw back to one of my parents, and it's something that I've had to really actively work on. I've had a situation where I even had to tell one of my parents, we're going to go shopping, and I wanted to get new skincare routine. And I had to say, you cannot stop me from spending money. I don't want you to say anything about, oh, that's too expensive. Let's just go to Walgreens. Let's just buy the drugstore brands. You don't need all this fancy face stuff. Because it was really something that I had decided on and I was going to do, despite all of the little internal thoughts and internal talking heads that were going to tell me this is stupid, you're spending, you don't need this fancy stuff. This is obviously you don't need this fancy stuff, is my subconscious mind telling me that's an act of scarcity, you don't need to do that. And me thinking oh, I should save the money instead. And I didn't want that. I wanted to lean into being more abundant. And I had decided, and I had made a plan to spend this money. And now I didn't want to be talked out of it. And that's just one example of sometimes you have to recognize where you are more wired to and then lean towards abundance. You're always leaning towards abundance, but abundance looks different for different people. And in my situation, it felt like an act of scarcity, but it was actually leaning into abundance. So this is really, really interesting stuff, because the question, is saving money an act of scarcity? For some people, they're going to be like, what the heck? And for others, they're going to be like, yeah, I feel the same way. And the truth is, money as a topic, as a thing, is a neutral thing. But we've all been wired to think a specific way about it. And most of us are wired on one end of the spectrum or the other. Either thinking that, saving money is something you do if you're in scarcity, or spending money is something you do if you're in scarcity, and vice versa. So understand where you come from, and the best way you can do that is the exercise, just sitting down, and every time you feel yourself, even a little tiny ping of internal judgment come up, write it down in a journal or something. that's something you can definitely work on. I'm going to give you some ways to work on it coming up soon. We're going to be doing something super fun in December and January, so stay tuned. But just make note of what's happening in your head right now. Okay, so the one thing that I want to say to tie this all together, because at the end of the day, I get it. I get the approach of thinking, why would I save if I am universally and infinitely abundant? Why would I save money? I get that questioning. I understand where people are coming from when they have that form of questioning. But I think we can all agree that saving money is not a bad thing. And if it feels like a bad thing because you have that internal wiring, then we're going to neutralize it a little more and say, what about just having money? What if you just had money? That can't be a bad thing, to have money so you can buy something whenever you want it. And this is where it comes in. This is where I can make it a little bit more real. Is infinite abundance is an amazing topic. And again, I believe we can all create as much money as we need. We all can have the amount of money that we want to have in order to do the things that we want to do. It is possible. When you consider I want to be careful with this because infinite abundance is real. But when you consider the context that we are living in, some people might say the quote unquote real world. When you consider the world that we live in today, we've added complexities that have made this idea of infinite abundance a little bit more complex. It still doesn't mean that it doesn't count. We can still believe that we are, meant to acquire as much as we want. We can bring in what it is that we essentially want to create in terms of the value that we're willing to put out in the world. But the structure in which we spend and make money in and utilize money, the way that we've taken this idea of money, we've put it in as a middleman in order to survive and thrive. We've said, okay, we're going to use money now instead of, just trading your services or trading your whatever it is that you do, your products that you make, or just living off of your own, being self-sufficient. Like we got away from that. Some people are still there, but we've gotten away from that and we've added money into the equation. So because we've added money into the equation, as an infinite abundant being, now money is the thing that you need to infinitely produce. Before money was a thing, you were still an infinitely abundant being and you were just able to produce your version of a successful, happy life, however that, whatever it meant for you when you couldn't apply a number to it. And that's where we really need to be getting back to. But obviously we have to live in the quote unquote real world and manage money. And so the complexity that gets added to this whole idea that, yes, you can bring in money whenever you want and you can spend as much money as you want within the realm of reason, as long as you have the money to spend on it, you can do all that. But we have this complex thing that is not abundant, and it is called time. Now, I don't want you to confuse the idea that time is not an abundant resource with the fact that we can all make time to get things done. Like you can definitely utilize an abundant resource like money to buy yourself more time. But at the end of the day, time is not an abundant resource. It is constantly running out. Because when we talk about time, we're talking about your lifetime. And because it is constantly running out, the clock is always ticking, it makes having money just as important as the ability to bring in more money, because time is a factor in this equation. So if you have, let's do a couple examples. Number one, an emergency fund. Let's say you don't have an emergency fund because you believe you are infinitely abundant. So you are just going to manifest more money when you need it. Well, you have something happen and you have no money to pay for it because you have to go out and manifest it. So already we have that space. Even if it's a little gap, we have that space of time where then you need to go out and create the value that you can exchange for the other value, which is money. And then there's probably another time gap between you providing the value and the value coming back to you. And however long these chunks of time are, it doesn't really matter, but it's something. And between when that emergency happened and when you were able to bring in the money to pay for that emergency, you add more money or stress or, I don't know, then the inability to spend your money elsewhere. So having money while also creating as much money as you want means you're able to utilize a sum of money to spend on that emergency while continuing to make money, continuing to live the lifestyle you have been living. You don't have to pause that. You don't have to stress about getting the money in to pay for it. And then the money that you do continue to make, it can go back into your having bucket, or you can decide to do something else with it. But the act of having money, aka saving money, buys you something that is much more valuable than money, which is time. And in the other example, actually I have two more examples, but they're kind of together, is this idea where, if we think that saving is scarce, is an act of scarcity, we can kind of think of that the same way then as we approach our health. And specifically in the US, health insurance is kind of a headache, but we have to pay for health insurance for the most part. And you could think, well, if you are an infinitely abundant being, then you can manifest good health. You don't need to pay for health insurance. And a lot of people might make that argument and try to get away from it. But at the end of the day, again, we have time. We also have our bodies that we want to take care of. And not paying for any potential thing that could happen, and then believing, well, I can manifest myself into good health, or I can manifest the money that I need to pay for the medical costs. Again, you have that time and you have that stress. And so you're paying for something. It just might not be in the form of dollars. And you could just avoid it through the process of insurance. And I get that insurance feels, it doesn't necessarily feel like the most fun place to put your money, but you're buying yourself time and you're buying yourself that the freedom of the stress. This kind of relates to retirement as well. I know a lot of entrepreneurs who are not even thinking about retirement because they're just like, well, I love what I do. I'm just going to work until I die, which is a great mindset to have, but we can't neglect our being good financial stewards. Just like we can't neglect being good financial stewards when it comes to our health and taking care of ourselves in the form of, paying for health insurance in case something were to happen. We can't neglect being good financial stewards for our future. And the reason is because there's a lot of things that happen that we have no way of predicting. And so retirement, instead of thinking about it as, you saving for the future because you want to work forever, think of it as you insuring against other realities that could take place. And yes, you can still believe that you'll manifest a healthy, long-lived life, but we also know that the human condition is unpredictable. And so in order to buy time and buy the lack of stress, we need to be good financial stewards. And again, time just adds this level of complexity that makes it a little less abundant to live a fully abundant life where we believe, I can bring in money whenever I need to, so I don't need to save. I can bring money or I can manifest good health, so I don't need to worry about life insurance. Like, heck, if you're not going to pay for life insurance, why do you even spend time working out? Why do you even spend time eating healthy food? We do all of this so we can maintain a healthy body and a healthy life. And the same goes for, saving or investing for retirement. And we can make this argument for a lot of different things, but I think I've beat that. I shouldn't say that. I don't like that metaphor, but I think I've beat that topic to death. We'll just say that. To me, the way that I look at saving is that saving is freedom. It is opportunity, and having money is something that is so much more powerful, or just as powerful as the ability to manifest more money. And what I find a lot of people do who aren't comfortable with the idea of saving money is they end up spending money, but that's not because consciously they think that's the better thing to do, is to never have savings, but because subconsciously their subconscious mind is uncomfortable with the idea of having money. And so I challenge you, if you are much more wired to a spending mentality and to thinking that saving is an act of scarcity, try just having money. You're going to have to put it in a savings account. I hate to break it to you. There's going to be a name on it called savings, but don't consider it savings. Just consider it having money, because that is a powerful place to be in. And what that's going to do for you is allow you to say yes to things so much easier, allow you to say no to things so much easier, allow you to get out of any situation that you're uncomfortable or unsafe in, and allow you to go towards new opportunities that could mean even more financial abundance. Okay. The last thing I want to touch on is this idea of saving at, and being kind of a scarcity thing. I do think that it also bleeds into, the same approach bleeds into planning and goal setting. I know a lot of professionals, coaches who are going away from this idea of setting goals, setting income goals, setting launch goals, setting goals in general. And my counter argument to that is that setting goals, yes, it can be unhealthy when you get to the grindstone, when you get to the last month or the last few days of a launch and really letting yourself stress about hitting the numbers exactly. That is an unhealthy place to be, I would say. And so there's really important mindset work you need to do in the approach to reaching your goals. But setting goals is a very, very important thing to do, not only for you, but also for your subconscious mind. We've talked about this before on the show, but specificity is something that you deeply need. Your subconscious deeply needs. Your subconscious loves to take orders, and it wants to know exactly what it needs to be going for. It loves to have that specificity because your subconscious mind takes everything literally. And so if you say make more money, it sees one penny on the ground, it'll pick the penny up and say, here's more money. But if you say, go out there and make $133,000.33 this year, it's much more likely going to go searching for those opportunities that are going to bring in those levels of income than pick up the next penny that it sees. So having goals, whether it's, how many people you want to impact this year or next year, let's talk 2020 now, or how much money you want to make, whatever that boils down to, it is still so important to make sure that you are at the very least planning and setting your goals for the year or the quarter or the month. Now, there is a big difference between planning to have a plan and work off of that and planning to just procrastinate. So make sure that when you do your goal setting, you are doing it very focused and very specifically. You give yourself some time constraints to plan, and then you take it and you run with it. Don't dwell on the planning too much, and don't, don't let planning take over for what should be you taking action. You plan and then you take action. You plan and then you take action. You consume, you plan, you take action. But action needs to be the biggest part. But the planning part is still super important because it's hard to take action without knowing where you're going, right? So make a plan, then take action. And then as you're taking action towards your goals and you're getting closer to your goals, that's when you can release the grip strength on your plan. Because just like your subconscious mind loves specificity, just like it likes to take orders and it likes to know exactly what it's looking for, it also likes to take the path of least resistance. And if it feels you starting to resist because consciously you're stressing out about hitting these goals, it's going to think, oh, that's not easy anymore. I'm not going to go that route. I'm not going to do what she ultimately wanted. So when you start getting closer and closer to those goals, start releasing that resistance and allow yourself to have fun and enjoy that this is the process you get to take. So that's my message to you around saving money. Is it scarcity? Is it abundance? Choose to reframe and look at it as abundance and just start with a little test of having money. I invite you to work on recognizing any sort of judgments you might be having about the way other people spend, save, make, invest their money. Just start writing it down and acknowledging it so you can identify kind of which end of the spectrum you're coming from and how you can lean into the other one. And the last thing I invite you to do is to make a plan for 2020. So I have a super great free download called the Easy Profit Roadmap, and it shares with you the 5 steps to implement an easy profit system in your business. And it also shares with you my easy profit math. And what this does is it helps you create a purpose-driven revenue goal so you know exactly what to be shooting for. And you can set this for yourself for the year 2020, and you can be getting ready to tackle 2020, or maybe you want to even start a little earlier. And so you can get that by going to wonderwealthy.com/roadmap. I'm also going to be hosting a payday party workshop in the first week of the new year. So you definitely want to look out in your email inbox, get on the wait list. Once you download the roadmap, you'll have an opportunity to get on the wait list. So get on the wait list. In the payday parties, we dive in even deeper to your plan, but it is a very specific container where we approach your goal setting, and then you can take that and put it into action immediately. So it doesn't let you overplan. It doesn't let you plan just to procrastinate and to be a perfectionist. It lets you plan in a very specific container, and then it lets you go. So if you want to join us for the next payday party workshop, you can do that. But first, download the Easy Profit Roadmap and start calculating your easy profit math by going to wonderwealthy.com/roadmap. All right, my friends, I'd love to hear what you thought of this episode. Go ahead. If you are joining us from the Wealthy Entrepreneur group, this episode is pre-recorded in that live, and you can always join us every other week when we do the live episodes. Actually, it's happening a little sooner than every other week now, but just join the group by going to facebook.com and searching The Wealthy Entrepreneur, or you can click the link in the description box. You can join the group, and then I will notify you, let you know when the next live podcast recording is going to happen, and you can join us and ask questions live if you want. Otherwise, you can always just watch the videos, watch the podcast episode live or pre-recorded, recorded, and then you can comment with any questions that you might have. Otherwise, hop over to Instagram, add me at Tess_Wicks. I'd love to see you sharing the episode. I will definitely be reposting anything that you share about the episode. And if you have questions, you can send me a DM, and I'd love to chat about it. What do you think? Is saving money an act of scarcity? That's it for this week, and until next time, I hope you all wander wealthy.